Sales. Who doesn't like a good sale? More to the point, who doesn't like a good bargain? Certainly here on this channel we've done quite a few bargain crawls and I've picked up an awful lot of amazing deals, and they do seem to be out there in their droves. There's hardly a day goes by without emails and Facebook adverts and such like about flash sales on specific products, or general sales across a weekend or a full week or a month or indeed a full season. There seems to be at the moment almost some products that live permanently in sales. And these aren't necessarily products that were released a long time ago and it's just shelf queens getting cleared out. I'm seeing some products that don't seem to have been out all that long since they were proudly announced by a manufacturer and hitting the shelves of your local model shop. I'm not saying that you should avoid sales, certainly fill your boots whilst you can, make out like a bandit and make the most of some of the great prices that are out there. Certainly I've seen discounts down to certainly a good 65% off and beyond, which is mind-numbingly big figures, and it does pose quite a few questions. Certainly for the hobby itself, does this bode well for the future? Well, I'm here to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into the substance of today's video, I would like you to tickle that like button if you haven't already done so, and subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell too. Make sure that you're up to date so that you can get the newest videos as they come through. I'm Kirk, welcoming you back here to the channel, and we're going to talk about sales and whether they're good for the long-term health of the hobby. I like a sale, you like a sale, but does the hobby as a whole really like a sale? Now, there's many different reasons why items might go into sales, and it's not always an indication that items aren't selling well. Sometimes it's quite simply a case that retailers and manufacturers too know that there's a lot of new products coming through and they need to make sure that they've got space on the shelves for these new products and that they're not ending up with nowhere to put them and having things kind of back up in the back room in the shops. From a manufacturer's point of view as well, warehouse space costs money, and it's one of those things that I guess a lot of people do overlook, that retail is very complex, and just because something is in a sale doesn't mean that it's not selling. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
Now, we've all seen the January sales. The adverts have been around since long before I was a kid, and it'd always be starts Boxing Day, and you think, well, is this an indication that their pre-Christmas sales were much worse than anticipated? But no, this happens every single year, and in some respects it's simply a case of retailers clearing the shelves for the new season, but also, I guess, just making sure that they're getting good cash flow in a period that historically is a little bit of a slow sales period. Certainly in the after Christmas period, everybody's spent up, so January is probably one of the deadest months in retail otherwise. So sales are a good way of just, jimmying up a little bit of extra growth in the bottom line. When it comes to the model rail industry, the summer months are pretty much that cresting bottom of the valley. If you looked at the sales on a graph, it's a real sort of downturn in trade, and retailers do need to keep cash flow going through because they've got overheads that don't go away. It can be rents, certainly business rates, gas, electricity, and also people's wages as well. And it does make sense to make sure that there's still something coming into the till during that period to cover all of those expenses. It's also the case that a lot of these items have sold incredibly well, and you've got that initial burst of sales that happens when a new product is released. And we've seen that here with the Monday Club wagons, where there's certain points in the cycle where sales do come in noticeably bigger numbers. From when you first announce, there's always a bit of a spike there. When you show off EPs or livery samples, in the case of the Monday Club wagons, there's another big spike in people going, yeah, I'll order one of those. And the final, probably the biggest spike, is that moment when they arrive in the shops and everybody is getting that fear of missing out and wants to grab one before they go. And certainly with things like the Monday Club wagons, in some instances they've sold out to pre-order. In the case of the last one, I think it's sold out in 48 hours, certainly no more than 72 hours from appearing in the shops. But if you have one or two left over, sometimes they end up kind of lingering a little bit because, you know, you've already made your money back on the production run. And, you know, one or two left over on the shelves, you really want to clear them out, make the space for the next product that's coming. And you're not losing money by putting them into a sale. It's really just a case of, you know, good housekeeping, tidying up the shelves. And a lot of businesses factor this into the method at which they price things out. So, you know, you've got your break-even point. You sell a certain number of models at the original release price with, you know, maybe the 15% discount that all retailers do. And at a certain point, you've made your money back. So all costs are covered and, you know, you've made a reasonable amount of profit. So everything's great, but there's still some left over. So actually, they have no money tied up in them, in effect. If you can shift those, that's money to your bottom line. And actually, from this kind of almost mercenary way of looking at economics, you could sell them for almost anything. But you don't want to sell them too cheap because you create an air that the product is worth less than you want it to be perceived. And, you know, if the likes of Bentley or Ferrari or Rolls-Royce had a sale, yes! And said, oh, you know, for the next month, we're selling our product at, you know, quarter of the RRP. Yes! You run the risk that that creates a perception that the product was overpriced to start with and that it isn't worth the ticket price. So you have to be very careful about the way you go about this. You can't just practically give them away because it isn't helpful to the brand, but you can do an extra discount, get them out the door, get money in the till, particularly during the summer months when a lot of people go on holiday, when modelling isn't necessarily at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And as was explained to me by one retailer, there's not a lot of tools in your toolbox as a retailer to keep the sales flowing through, and sales are one of those things. But are there too many? Today's video is sponsored by TMC, the Model Centre, your first choice for finding all of the models featured today at the best possible price at the link in the description. TMC also offers custom weathering and renumbering to any model, be it brand new or pre-owned. Check out their full pre-owned listings too, where you can be assured of quality as every item is screened and graded by professional staff. TMC, the Model Centre, your first choice for all aspects of modelling. There's always been a case of sales. You know, I can remember going back 20 years or more and seeing these cut price sales. Usually, end of line is always quite a common one. But there's a lot of times when it's, I don't really want to say last season's products. There is a steady churn of new products coming through from retailers, and you don't really want older models, especially if there's a newer model coming through. So for example, Bachmann Class 25s, Bachmann Class 08s. Now we've had new models announced for both of those from Bachmann. And does that mean that there's going to be less demand and less interest in the older models? Well, from retailers' points of views, you don't really want them left on the shelf to find out. So there may be an element of trying to move these, knowing that there's retooled stock coming through. We've seen that with Class 37s prior to all new models coming out of these. And if you're a retailer who's left with stock on the shelf of a previous iteration of tooling, then you could end up with something that is much more difficult to sell on. But how damaging is it to the hobby? Well, let's go back to the Ferrari, the Rolls-Royce, the Bentley. Cutting the price too much, it kind of devalues the intrinsic quality of a brand. This notion that in people's eyes it's a premium product worth a premium price. So you can't cut prices of models so dramatically as to make people start to wonder, were they overpriced to start with, or is it something that, if a model is discounted heavily, relatively quickly after release, does it create this notion that they're not selling? That may not be the case, and for some of the reasons that I outlined before, it may be other far more complex reasons. And of course, a manufacturer has to pay for storage. They have to effectively, from an accountancy point of view, it costs money to have money tied up in stock. It doesn't appreciate in value. It can't be invested into new products to make the business money. So from an accountancy point of view, there's a lot of complex sums going on. But if you end up creating an air that there's going to be a sale, then does it mean that more people start to wait for the sales? And when we've talked about this on the Monday Club, there's been people who said, well, I bought a model when it came out at a certain price, and then several weeks or months later, I saw that model at a substantial discount. And I think the issue here for manufacturers and retailers a little bit is that person then thinks, I've taken a bit of a hit on that. I could have waited a few weeks or a couple of months, and I could have had it a lot cheaper. Maybe next time I'll wait for it to go into the sale. And if you create an expectation that sales will happen, then you can actually hurt your initial sales. Why would you pay full price for something that you know that you will pretty much guarantee to be able to buy a month or 2 months or maybe 6 months down the line for a substantial discount? And when your money is tight, that is quite an attractive proposition. So from a manufacturer's point of view, you don't want people to just assume that there will be a sale and there will be a bigger discount if only people wait. And the example I always use on this is Ben & Jerry's ice cream. It's sold as a premium product and it has a particular price point, theoretically, but it's in sales so often that very few people pay full price for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Certainly amongst my friends, people I know, you wait for it to be in the sale because you know the sale is coming. It's not like it's going to sell out. You know that there will be a supply of this product. So what Ben & Jerry's have actually done is they've taken a product that's, say, got an RRP of £6 a tub, and they've made people think it's only worth £3.50 a tub because it's in a sale at that price so often. and you create a perception that that is the appropriate selling price of your product. And now, who's going to pay that premium price for Ben and Jerry's?
We need some more vanilla chocolate and strawberry ice cream.
Now, there is a risk of that happening with certain models if you put them in a sale all the time. So say manufacturer X makes particular locomotive Y, but people start to notice that, hold on, 6 months after that's released, there's always a sale. Suddenly, it's not just one retailer. If it was one retailer, you'd think they overstocked. So, they've got a few hundred of those things they've got to shift on. Silly them. Maybe they'll be cleverer at the amount that they order next time. But if lots of different retailers are doing the same, it starts to suggest that maybe the manufacturer is selling these out. Why has the manufacturer got a warehouse that has an awful lot of these in stock? Unless nobody bought them first time round. And if you start to spot patterns with this, certain types of models are always ending up in the sales, then it creates an expectation that they will always be in the sale. I'm not saying don't buy these things. I've had some amazing deals of late. If anything, I've probably spent more than I've ever spent before on models, certainly more than I've spent in a long, long time, because there's so many great deals out there. Now, are those deals going to continue? Now, I would suggest that at some point in the near future, the sales will start to dry up. And we have seen a pattern of this before. I can remember maybe 15 years ago, Bachmann Mark I coaches getting sold for £10 each, brand new from a particular box shifter. And it was a fabulous price, but a lot of the different coaches, not all, but a lot of the different coaches were being sold at a discounted rate. And yet we've got new coaches of that design coming through now at a substantial amount more than that. Those sales are long gone. The product is still healthy. And I would argue that those sales didn't harm the saleability of the product. But if going forward we see more and more products consistently going into sales, I think that that is something that doesn't bode well for the industry as a whole, because a manufacturer has to make a calculation. There's return, the amortization of the tooling. So, your tooling for, I was once told for things like track, tooling up a point, just say a left-hand point, you're talking about a similar kind of price as going out and buying a brand new BMW 5 Series. But you'd also need a right-hand point. So that's 2 BMW 5 Series. That's a lot of money. That's a huge investment, and we're seeing more and more a drive to the ooh shiny, the new model released. And so when I was young, the catalogue contained, maybe a dozen locomotives that were always there, always available. You had plenty of time to save up. And, they never changed their liveries or identities for several years on the trot. So people would save up, and there wasn't this drive that you needed to have the newest thing, fear of missing out. And now we're suddenly spoilt rotten. The hobby has never been so healthy in terms of new models coming through. And even today, the time of me recording this, we've had a new model announced that everybody's like, going, wow, we've been wanting this for ages. And yes, it's been wish listed a lot, but maybe we've been spoilt too much. It's almost like there's too many different new models coming through. The emphasis is on new models, and that means that you have to factor in amortizing the tooling over a much fewer number released, because that by next year it's old news. People will have moved on to the next new big thing. There's very few bread and butter models which can stay in the catalogue year in, year out, and actually give a good return for both retailers and manufacturers. So you've got this cost of tooling, you've got to recover all your R&D, making the CADs, the research. It's very expensive. When we went down to Hornby and chatted with Phil Morley, one of the things that struck me, and he was the designer of the new tool Black 5 model from Hornby, one of the things that struck me was how many years he had been working on that model. And that's not free. You've got to pay salaries for people to do that. You've got to pay for all the equipment, the research, the travel, going and measuring things up. There is a lot of work and a lot of people involved, and that does have to be recouped. And if there's this sense that, oh, well, Locomotive X is being released now, ooh, lovely, ooh, shiny, oh, now Locomotive Y is being announced and released, attention is gone. And there's a lot of models where we get a few runs if we're lucky, and then it's almost like we never see them again.
Where did you come from? Where did you go?
There are models in all the different ranges of manufacturers which do seem to be very thin on the ground. We go for years before we see another batch. And this also creates an air of, buy them whilst you can, or you can't get hold of them. And I don't think that this is sustainable in the long term for the hobby. We're going to get to a crunch point where if manufacturers are constantly seeing product left in the warehouse on the shelves that's sticking, that the sales aren't sustainable because they lower the expectation of what the product is worth. And you then find you have to make a decision that actually we have to retire this tooling because it costs us too much to make, and we cannot get a return on that because if people are going, oh, we'll just wait for the sales, then it's not going to sell and it's actually going to cost us money, not make us money. That's not how business works. So I think that down the line we may find that certain more expensive models, I'm thinking in particular things like multiple coach EMUs, DMUs, that kind of thing, start to become a much less commercially viable proposition. Why? Because they're ending up in the sales an awful lot. And I think that as we go forward, there is a real risk that we're going to see fewer new models getting released. And perhaps worryingly for those who want to build up a fleet or maybe missed out first time round, we're not going to see the reruns of certain models. So for example, the all new tooled Class 24 with the 24-1 options from Bachmann, we've only seen one Tops Blue Class 24-1 with the head code boxes, and I don't know when there's going to be another one. And it's kind of suggesting that there's no longer considered to be the level of longevity from tooling that would help keep the costs of models down, because the manufacturers don't see it as viable to do another run, because I guess the thoughts are that those models would end up being shelf queens, not able to sell. And that is something that I think that we have to think about for the future. The hobby has never been more buoyant, but with more and more models sharing the same amount of pie in terms of the cash that's available for people to spend on them, it becomes a calculation. Is it viable, taking that smaller and smaller slice of the cake? And I think in some instances we might see that the sums come up and say no. So by all means, fill your boots, make out like a bandit in these sales. I certainly have. But going forward, I think that we're going to see less sales, because that's the only way that the hobby can preserve itself as a viable financial business that can afford to make the ready-to-run models that we want to see. But that's my thoughts, and I would love to hear from you in the comments section down below. This is the internet. I'm sure somebody's got an opinion on the internet. Feel free to type it in the comments, but I would love to hear from you. Just what do you think? I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, actually, these sales are brilliant for the hobby because they allow people who couldn't otherwise afford these models to afford them. But I think that misses the point. That the risk is that because these sales are happening, the root cause of these sales happening may well mean that there aren't as many products going forward, and it isn't necessarily going to be the case that prices fall. In fact, I think far from that. I think that people will have to become more discerning, not just in the models that they buy, but from a manufacturer's point of view, in the models that they make. We're in a golden time now, so my thoughts are get them whilst you can. Also, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed watching this video. It's a great way of helping to support the channel, and if you haven't already done so, do subscribe and hit the notification bell to make sure that you see the new videos as and when they go up. Also, you can head on over to Patreon at the link down below. You'll find that underneath our extensive and exclusive merch store, and that too is a great way of helping support us to keep making the videos that you want to see. But until next time, this is me, Kirk, saying looking forward to reading your comments. Happy modelling, happy sales hunting, and of course there's so many great bargains across many different scales, many different products. And until next time, take care. I'll see you then. Today's video comes in association with Tramfabriek, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model 00 gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com, and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/JenniferKirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends. Well, hello there. Welcome back to the channel. It really is great to see you, and I do hope that you are well. I'm Jenny Kirk, and today I want to talk to you about sales, in particular... What the hell?